Alright, YouTube, I've had a host of people wondering, how is this random YouTuber in his bedroom so accurate at predicting what's happening in the political race that we're currently undergoing? Everybody thought he was wrong during the primaries. I had people claiming that Jeb Bush out of nowhere would seize the presidency. I had people claiming, oh, it's Ted for sure, it's Little Marco for sure. Why so much accuracy? Is it the occult? Is it some magic crystal ball or something like that? No, it's simple observation. And I've been doing this for a number of years. I did this in 2012 as well. Uh, we are undergoing a triple paradigm shift. People who haven't noticed this fact, who stick just with algorithms and mathematics, can't be as accurate as people who also take into consideration the human element. You saw Nate Silver right after the debate. What's he talking about? He's still holding to the idea that states like Michigan and Wisconsin and Minnesota and so forth can't possibly be experiencing a mass shift. They're still traditional blue states because they happen to have been blue for a few cycles. And it would take some monumental change by Trump. He would have to knock it out of the park in order to turn these states red. And that's simply not true. We're undergoing a paradigm shift in politics. That is, the triple paradigm shift is this. It's part political, it's part social, and it's part technological. Now, in my previous video I explained, we are now in the next epoch of electoral politics. In fact, we're in the next epoch in general. The social media epoch affects all of humanity. It goes well past just, cat posts and memes and things like that. The rapid transference of information from one individual to another, or from one individual towards potentially a very large group of others with very, very quick speed in an interconnected environment, is something very new to humanity. It's far more new than just the internet as a total. The early internet was mostly text. It was not instant. It was just information slapped on there almost in a literary sense that you had to physically access. That's not the way that it works anymore. This has transformed the political landscape of not just the US. You see it happening in Europe with some of the so-called far-right groups there that have embraced this change. You've certainly seen it in places like Turkey. You saw it in Tunisia. When Tunisia, they had their problem there with Sharia law-loving groups trying to take over. Social media helped to coordinate the protests that took those groups down. Tunisia, literally, its culture, its people, was literally saved by the existence of Facebook at the time. Twitter forms the same purpose. YouTube serves the same purpose. A million other sites serve the same purpose. Some random blog that somebody puts up, just because they happen to have their fucking iPhone with them. They take one picture of police brutality or a politician doing something wrong, and all of a sudden a political dynasty ends. An entire force is repulsed by tens of thousands of protesters and rioters, something like that. It's driving the world ahead at a much greater ability than the old internet, certainly than TV, certainly than radio or the telegraph or newsprint or something like that. The last time that there was an advent of information transference this significant in world culture was the advent of the printing press. Let alone radio, TV, okay, that's all well and good. That allows you to see and hear the person that's the topic at hand. But really, you have to go back to the printing press in the Renaissance to find something as revolutionary as social media. Even the early wave internet was little more than an electronic version of technology that we already had. But when they all became synthesized, they all became more instant, and especially, this is the topmost reason why it's a new epoch in humanity, not just a new political or social epoch, but a new human epoch, a very token of the Anthropocene era. The reason why is this. Specifically, it is interactive. It's more interactive. You have a news story there. That's basically just a newsprint story with maybe a video element plopped in or something. But you can interact with it. The real news story may be happening in the comments as opposed to the story itself. Some random comment, some shit poster from Australia almost inevitably, or Canada, posts something on there. It becomes its own viral meme, and it completely usurps the entire news cycle. Somebody with some random blog puts some evidence of a conspiracy there. Next day, 100,000 people have spread it around. Something like that happens. That's one part of the paradigm shift we're undergoing. The transformation of politics into the social media era means that appearances mean less. What is said means basically nothing. And all that matters is the way in which it's said, and specifically that what's said can be encapsulated in easily shared form. Not some great soaring 10-minute long speech. Yes, that's very good. You go on there, you go on YouTube, you watch a Martin Luther King speech or a JFK speech, a speech delivered by one of the better speakers of the last 100 years or so. And it's very stirring, it still has an effect. But it would be difficult to encapsulate that in something that would be shared by people with a lower attention span, as opposed to a 7-second video clip, an animated image, a single infographic with 2 sentences of text overlap onto it. That is really what's driving politics now in this world. It's low attention span, has nothing to do with an hour-and-a-half TV segment. Even with the debates, most people had the debate open in one tab, and then they had, their Twitter open in another, maybe YouTube, 4chan, whatever it happens to be. Because they were active. They were taking part, literally, in the political process through activism by putting their own opinion out there, by voting on a poll, by making a tweet, by making an analytic video like I did thereafter. Of course, I don't use Twitter. I use YouTube. I find it more entertaining. I still don't wrap my head around quite why Twitter is in such wide usage. And they manipulate everything. They manipulate their algorithms, they censor hashtags, they take accounts down for being too unfriendly and stuff. It's like, what's the fucking point? I'm going to stick with YouTube. Unless something... I want YouTube 2.0 to be like holographic. I want to have a little thing on my desk where I can watch the videos in like holographic form, and then I'm just going to dress up as Palpatine, and I'm just going to sit there mumbling for half an hour, and you can watch that too on your little holographic platform. It'll be pretty cool. I'll be the first person to embrace that kind of technology when it comes out, trust me. I can imagine there'll be like literal like Star Wars style games that people play. They'll have like little alien chess pieces and stuff. It'll be holographic. It'll be great. The second paradigm shift is demographic. It's strictly social. What's happening there is that across the country, the public dialogue, because the issues have changed, because the faces have changed, because the platforms of the party have changed. You saw Chelsea Clinton, for instance, very funny, comes out and says, oh, marijuana is killing people. Is this the same Democratic Party that 10 years ago was saying, yeah, it might be time to legalize it because we shouldn't be putting people in prison for smoking basically a harmless plant? And they got shit for it at the time. I was a Democrat back then, by the way, myself. Or at least I leaned left. I wasn't really a partisan, or I thought I was, because I thought the Democratic Party was monolithic in these things. Quickly realized that wasn't actually the case. But you see, the Democratic Party right now is leaning further right on many fiscal issues. They've ignored the progressive movement. That much is clear. The progressive movement is essentially dead within the Democratic Party. The Republican Party, though, has undergone its own paradigm shift. Their candidate is a lifelong, more or less apolitical individual who has supported Democrats and Republicans, who has taken up almost Democratic talking points on race. I think another humorous aside here we need to point out. Right now, all of the so-called leftist media is excoriating what Trump said about black communities. But the Democrats themselves have been saying those same things. Oh, black communities have been laid waste to. They're overrun with crime. There's just systemic violence everywhere. We need to do more to help them. Now, they're trying to cast what he said as bigoted, as though his real intonation was, oh, look at these subhuman brown people always killing each other. It's not what he said, and people understand, I think, that's not what he said. The Republican Party is leaning now more towards populism, worker movement, nativism, literally an America First movement, as well as forsaking some of the far-right talking points on moral issues. For instance, has Trump really said anything? Did he say anything in the debates about gay marriage? No. Well, that's a new one. Romney mentioned it. He thought it was a good idea at the time. Of course, he was wrong. Did he mention abortion? No. Because he's not making it a platform. He's too smart for that. He knows that he'd get completely laid waste to by the social media generation driving the goddamn election. So that's the second paradigm shift. The second paradigm shift is that people in areas that have been affected by the globalized economy don't care about the fact that the Democrats want to offer them a little bit more welfare because of a 0.5% raise in taxes. They don't give a fuck. They want their jobs back. The Republicans are offering them a plan to do that under Trump. They wouldn't have been, by the way, if it was Jeb nominee, he'd be 15, 20 points behind Clinton right now. He'd be getting absolutely decimated. Ted Cruz, he'd be a holdover in the traditional red evangelical states. He'd have lost half the Deep South by now. Marco Rubio would have fared better, honestly. Rubio was the only person, perhaps other than Trump, that could actually pull this kind of election off. And then only because he's younger. He's more well-spoken when he doesn't get robotic, as Clinton does too. That'd be an even match on that one. And yes, because I've got some Slavic ancestry, I'm keeping the spoon in the cup. And I don't care if it offends people. I don't care if your feelings are hurt. This channel's not meant to be politically correct and never will be. The third change is in society. Now this really is being dragged along into existence by the other paradigm shifts. That is, you saw the last time society underwent a major change. In the early Bush years, people coming off of the feel-good 90s had a general sense of patriotism. They were ambivalent about corruption for the most part. Yeah, they'd complain about it, put in a tabloid gossip about it, but did it really affect their view? Not so much. I can remember this period of time. This is like the first sort of period I was culturally aware. They didn't care about it because the economy was good. You had, Windows 95, Windows XP. Oh man, it's so cool. Everything's so great. Man, I'm going to go play Age of Empires or something like that. Nobody cared. But then the Iraq War happened, and Katrina happened, and all of the other problems happened, and of course 9/11 happened. And all of a sudden that optimism turned to malaise. We were right back at square one, just like it was the middle of the Cold War again, only with a new enemy. And people got rather downhearted by this. They didn't like it. They wanted to play Pokemon. They wanted to, play with Furby or Tickle Me Elmo or something like that. They didn't want to address mature world issues. They didn't want to pretend that there were enemies left to fight because they were tired. They were exhausted after the Cold War. They wanted to party for a while. And they did. They got a half a decade to do that. Then 9/11 happens, of course. It kind of dashes their hopes and dreams. The first paradigm shift then was that people started to question the government. And the internet helped this, early YouTube and so forth, at the end of the Bush administration. I was on this bus, so to speak, myself. I excoriated Bush. 2007, 2008, all I did, for the most part, was talk about how bad Bush was. And he deserved it, honestly. He was a complete moron. Not a moron as in literally retarded, didn't know what he was doing. Moron as in his plans always failed, and he was too corrupt to care that they were failing because he didn't give a fuck about the people of the United States. The left at this time took up a hard line against the drug war. They took up a line against government intrusions into privacy. They took up a hard line, certainly, against war. They took up a hard line against sort of corporate machine politics. Now, though, it's flipped. This lasted into the first term of Obama. When it became clear that Obama was not an anti-war candidate, he successfully made the argument to people that they should ignore that fact. They should embrace warmongering. They should embrace the police state. They should embrace domestic surveillance. He didn't want to do away with these things like he claimed he had. He successfully made that argument and turned the Democratic Party into the pro-war party, into the pro-surveillance party, into the pro-everything-else-bad-for-the-country party. The Republicans are now the ones shifting. Their reaction has been, well, Trump, as a candidate, has he named one nation he intends to invade? No, he hasn't. He said he wants to cripple ISIS and questioned whether using atomic weapons against them was a good idea. You can make an argument for or against that, I suppose. as a non-state actor. I'm not sure how well it would go over in Geneva, but yeah, so you can make that argument for certain. But has Clinton suggested a willingness to attack any nation? Yes. In fact, she's talked about she definitely wants to attack Iran. She almost certainly wants to attack Syria with ground troops. She intends to attack Russia or China upon them attempting to hack any government emails. I can understand why that'd be a touchy issue for her. They've become the pro-war party. She's just taking Obama's successes and building it upon them. What she doesn't realize, and why she's at a disadvantage, is that because society and technology have undergone such a substantial shift in the last 4 years, she has been left behind along with her party's platform. The platforms that may have worked in 2012 no longer do. It's abundantly clear that this is the case. There's a reason why her opponent, who is supposedly the orange Hitler with all these new scary ideas, has won handily the early voting in Florida, despite at the time being behind the polls, outperformed all expectations in the primaries, frequently ended up with results ahead of his polling in the primary states, is now tied with her, or possibly slightly ahead, has pulled ahead and solidified his control over at least 5 of the competitive states, with another 2 so close that he might be ready to do that now and win the election. She has been left behind. The Republicans have not. Additionally, you have the technological and political aspect merging, forming a massive organic movement for the change candidate, which is Donald Trump. You may not like the kind of change that he's offering, but he's the one benefiting from that general prevailing wisdom that we do need change. And thus, his core of support is significantly more hard. Clinton is running a standard campaign. She's using the paid shills. She's using the TV ads. It's not working. It's not going to work. She's using the standard, well, I'll promise everything short of the moon on a stick when I'm in the debates thing. That's not apparently working either. People are more receptive to the organic message of the Trump campaign. Do you think it was coincidental that right after the debate, he has his record day of fundraising, absolutely blows everyone out of the water with how much money he gains in a single day? Something like, I think it was 18 or $20 million of donations in just a few hours' time. That doesn't say to me he lost the debate handily and looked like an idiot. That suggests to me that a lot of people who were undecided have now flocked over to him and pledged their support because it's actually Hillary that they find scary now, which is kind of what he needed to do going into the debate and the reason why I give him the advantage there, albeit one that was lackluster compared to what it could have been. He could have absolutely decimated her with fairly decent level of ease. It wouldn't have taken that much more effort. He was unprepared. That is admittedly true. Anyone claiming, oh, well, he was a genius. No, he was unprepared at the debate. If he had done a little preparation, he would have done so much better. We wouldn't even be talking about Clinton right now because it'd be a foregone conclusion that she was going to lose the election. Now he has to drag on to the next couple of debates. I think he'll win. I think he'll do fine. If nothing else changes, I think he's going to win handily. In fact, the landslide that Scott Adams and others have talked about is this. If early voting in Florida is an indicator, turnout by Trump supporters will be significantly higher. Turnout by Democrats will be significantly lower, which they are compared to 2012 numbers. He will get an extra 2 or 3 points across the board just in turnout. If we also assume that undecided voters break about evenly for the two of them, that becomes a non-issue. I think that's also non-arguable. I don't think that there will be any late surge for Clinton. And if it was, it'd get blunted so much by increased turnout by the Trump forces, it wouldn't even matter. This throws Colorado in his direction. It throws New Hampshire in his direction. It certainly allows him to get all the 5 states he's ahead in. It probably gives him Wisconsin and Michigan. It might even give him Pennsylvania. That is a landslide election, where popular vote turnout being higher for one candidate over the other has completely swung the election in the other direction, along with 3 or 4 states that were seen as toss-ups, maybe even leaning blue states. There is a triple paradigm shift going on here, and it's my observation of this fact that allows me to have the accuracy that I've had. While most of the talking heads and supposedly accurate pundits were saying that Trump had no chance whatsoever of winning in the primaries, I was saying after Super Tuesday increasingly his chance was approaching 100%. His chances were already above 50-50 by the time that the voting was done in Nevada. He had won the 3 of the first 4 states. He had come in second in Iowa. It was clear who the front runner was. People ignoring the polls like idiots when they should have been paying attention at least to the aggregated polls, if not singular polls, which I never do. I look only at RCP, and that's another reason for my accuracy. If they had just used the numbers and a little bit of common sense and observed that a shift was happening in the country and that the trends didn't seem to follow historical frameworks for the last 4 or 5 election cycles, they would understand what was happening. With a little bit of deeper thought, they would have realized why that was happening. Not just that it was present, but why it was present. It's because of social media. He's the social media candidate. All of his opponents followed a standard model. He didn't. He forsook it. He realizes what's happening. This is why he has an advantage, or one of the major reasons why. And that's why my predictions have been accurate. I don't have to go into the persuasion stuff of Scott Adams. I don't have to go into the algorithms of Nate Silver or Larry Sabato. I don't have to cherry pick over single polls like Karl Rove to establish a degree of accuracy. I'm only looking at the human element here. The RCP, the polls that I do use in my predictions and my prediction making, are secondary. They're subjugated to the larger shifts that are happening within our society. And these shifts are gaining dominance more and more every single day. Not just during this election. It's been a couple years in coming. Trump realized that it was coming. He foresaw this years ago. That's why he jumped in. That's why he didn't jump in 2012. Why do you think he didn't? He realized, well, I have another rich opponent who can theoretically self-fund. That takes that off the table. The challenger is an incumbent who, maybe has mediocre popularity. Wouldn't it be easier to wait till he's gone? And so that's what he did. That's why he's winning. And he is. He's ahead right now. I don't care if Nate Silver still thinks that Colorado is leaning blue. It's not. It's a complete toss-up, and I would probably give it to Trump if you asked me which way I think it would end up leaning. I would also say, yeah, he probably ends up getting Michigan and Wisconsin. But, as before, so I don't fuck myself, I will not make a final prediction until the last round of polling a couple days before the election. And anyone trying to make a final prediction before then is fooling themselves. We've got 2 more presidential debates to go. I believe Trump will do well. In fact, I believe that his next 2 debates he'll do sufficiently better than in the first debate. I think there will be no question that he wins the next 2. That could be wrong, though. And if my assumption is wrong, then my final prediction would be completely wrong. So it wouldn't make sense to make that final prediction until those have played out. We also have to wait for the next WikiLeaks dump. Until those 3 things happen, the next 2 presidential debates, ignore the vice presidential debate, doesn't matter, nobody cares, and the WikiLeaks dump. When those 3 things have culminated, I'll be prepared to make a final estimation of which way the race will go. Now, again, could be wrong. Could be that my, near 100% accuracy completely goes down the toilet in November. Clinton out of nowhere gets a 5-point boost. The polls are wrong. They drastically oversampled Republicans. Undecided voters broke at the 12th hour. They broke heavily for Clinton or something like that. It could be. It could be that none of the positive things I see Trump doing already from the primaries through this early general election hold true in November. But I have no reason to believe that they won't, and that's why I say if the trajectory of the race remains the same, my projection would be Trump by 299 or higher, ultimately. That's about all. Peace out.